Mr. Chairman, Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association. We represent local affiliates that negotiate contracts with every school district in the state of Nevada. I just want to bring your attention to Section 6, which dumbfounds many of our local presidents in rural school districts and many members of bargaining teams. But Section 6 changes back, like the rest of the bill, to pre-2015 language, and this is in relation to selection of arbitrators just for school districts and employee organizations representing teachers or education support personnel. So the language that was added in the Roberson bill in 2015 required the school districts and bargaining units to select an arbitrator at least 330 days before the expiration of the contract. There was other language added around requiring that arbitrator to do certain things. I'm here to report that this does not happen in most negotiations based on really the inability to find and secure and the cost of finding an arbitrator in rural areas. So moving back to the pre-2015 process for reaching impasse, declaring impasse, and then selecting an arbitrator to come and deal with that makes a great deal of sense for an overwhelming majority of the collective bargaining processes that are happening across the state. Other provisions, including this, it moves back the requirement of number of bargaining sessions in order to for either party to declare impasse from 8 to 4, and then provides that the arbitrator shall, within 30 days of being selected and after 7 days of written notice to the parties, hold the hearing to receive information, and then the final change back to the previous language in Section 6 is that if an arbitrator asks the parties to resume negotiations before final offers, they'll have 30 days instead of 7 to potentially have those negotiations. Happy to take any questions if you have any on Section 6.
Thank you. Questions? I have one, and that is that so it reduces the number, it calls for a requirement of 4 negotiation sessions rather than 8, as well as a requirement to hold hearings within 30 days. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
Okay. And after the selection of the arbiter and 7 days after notice to the parties, if I'm correct. Okay. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for helping me clarify that. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Senator Kekeffer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there are a minimum of 3 sessions required, right? And then
four bargaining sessions before. Now, you could have more than 4 bargaining sessions, but the new language here would require at least 4 sessions before either party could initiate the impasse process.
Is it is there a sweet spot in terms of number of sessions to bring people together? I mean, cutting it in half, I mean, is it, when, I've never sat in collective bargaining negotiations, so I don't know where people cross over and start deciding that we're going to come together instead of drive each other apart. So the
Nevada State Education Association, we have 36 locals at 36 different bargaining tables with obviously counties that range, or school districts that range in size from, the one of the very largest school districts in the country to one of the smallest school districts in the country. And so I don't think that there is a universal sweet spot. I will say that from our members and those who are on bargaining teams across the state, the process to select an arbitrator, even though very few of our local affiliates ever go to arbitration, but that the language that was changed in 2015 does not work for many of the districts and for, I would say, any of the bargaining units in the state.
Mr. Chairman, this is not my main concern on the bill. I just wonder if by reducing the number of mandatory sessions before you can declare for arbitration down to 4, if it just makes it easier for people to throw up their hands and go to arbitration. I don't know.
So through the chair, to Senator Keycap for Chris Daly, Nevada State Education Association, an overwhelming majority of these negotiations are not going to go to arbitration. With that said, I think, we heard in previous bill testimonies of, some negotiations going to arbitration in Clark County. You can ask them, but I'm guessing that they probably knew by the 4th session. But if they didn't, they don't have to, if neither party decides to move forward with the impasse process, they don't have to. They can keep, bargaining for as long as they want.
Thank you. And I think if I might just make a note that I had, served on bargaining teams, especially when I was at the city, and I sat on the negotiating team for both City Employees Association as well as city firefighters, and I provided some other support for Metro Police in their negotiations at one point. But I found that, a lot of different people, a lot of different ways to do it, and sometimes one side might want to string things out, and the other thinking that might improve their bargaining position, and other times it's like, let's just get it done, and they go through the process. So it's hard to say, and I know that if I can just speak for the firefighters, there was one negotiation where the members of the negotiating team came in somewhat green and unprepared, and all they wanted to do was just sit around and argue repeatedly, and in the long run they didn't achieve what they thought that would be an easy process for them. So it's all over the map. Thank you. Mr. Murillo, welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Ruben Murillo, President of the Nevada State Education Association, and a proud member of the coalition of unions that have worked hard towards this fix. We want to thank Rusty and Steve for giving a very thorough presentation. When SB153 became law, it was a result of an agreement with a senator who's no longer with us and a union official looking to mitigate the attacks on education unions. I know because I was privy to the workings of that strategy, as were leaders of other public labor unions. It was part of a larger political deal that did irreparable harm to the collective bargaining process for public employees. Ultimately, all but a small number of unions were in agreement to these changes in NRS 288, but it was a bitter pill to swallow, and the after effects were immediately felt. Our goal was to prevent labor in Nevada from becoming another Wisconsin. However, when you compromise on fundamental beliefs like negotiating cuts to collective bargaining, it can come back to bite you, especially when the other side has ulterior motives. Educators in Clark County immediately felt the impact when salary increases due to steps and columns were denied by the district, who claimed an inability to pay, an unintended consequence that led to lost salary and numerous arbitrations. Other districts across the state felt the same impact. When teachers and support professionals would want to work, what teachers and support professionals would want to work in a state where a law would prevent them from getting negotiated step increases paid? And you ask why teacher and educator turnover is so high. Supporting SB153 would allow for fair negotiations where both management and workers can negotiate under reasonable and fair conditions. Securing an arbitrator a year in advance does not necessarily set the stage for successful negotiations, and in fact creates a one-way path to arbitration. Allowing negotiations to occur during the workday would be a blessing to those who live in our rural counties, where in our case, educators and administrators may live up to over an hour or an hour more from their work locations. In fact, when this bill was passed, a local superintendent decried the impact on travel borne by the educators and administrators when negotiating after hours. I'm asking for your support of SB 153 to return the respect that is due to the negotiation process. If we want to recruit and retain educators, it seems we all agree that they need to be paid more, then the adoption of SB 153 would allow for negotiated salary increases our educators depend on to be automatically paid, instead of depending on convoluted salary schemes that are woefully inadequate in providing a stable source of income.